Okay, so Rod Richardson, you're up next.
Thank you very much for having a public comment period at your meetings. I appreciate it. I trust all of you are champions of public access to the beaches, are you not? Is there anyone here who thinks it's a bad idea? Good, because I
don't think we'd be able to sit up here if we had a different.
No, I didn't think so. I didn't think that there was any, and yet, earlier this summer on June 30th, I was paddling around Cartwright Island on a paddleboard with my daughter and two friends, and these gentlemen in these boats, I noticed that they were giving a problem to 4 boats that were anchored on the foreshore, and they had about a dozen kids there that were playing on the foreshore, and these guys were clearly harassing them and giving them a problem. I paddled up and asked what was going on. I asked the people on the boats, and they said to me, these guys are telling us that we can't anchor here, we can't play on the foreshore because this is all private land. And they told us that the Gardeners own Gardiner's Island into the water as far as an ox can walk up to its belly without getting its belly wet. Something that I've heard in the past from these security guys. Okay? I've always asked them for a deed in the past. They've never been able to produce it. Okay? Something that shows me this language that they are telling the public. Okay? They are threatening them and telling them that they're going to call Marine Patrol if they don't leave, if their kids play on the foreshore, public foreshore. Okay? So, I went up and, my daughter had gone ahead and she, with her friend, had paused on the shore to rest, parked her paddleboard and got off. And the security boat came screaming over towards her. I got off on the shore and ran up because I didn't want my daughter intimidated or threatened with arrest for visiting a natural place. So I asked them to talk to me, not my 12-year-old daughter. And I asked them to explain themselves. The guy gave me the tale of the ox, this fairy tale that they're using to support this claim. And I said to him, oh, well, could you show me a deed, please? Could you show me, a piece of paper that shows me that you have ownership? And he said he didn't have one. But I do want to point out to you that, these 2 boats, this military-style patrol craft, everybody can see, this is about $200,000 worth of equipment sitting in the water out there, plus employees. And they cannot afford a piece of paper to back up their claim. So, in any event, I don't want to spend too much time on the incident. You can read about it on cartwrightislandpublicaccess.com. I've set up a site which has all the information because when I saw last year them kicking off an elderly lady who had paddleboarded over and was tired and, needed to rest, and they kicked her off, I felt that something really wrong was going on. And I researched it thoroughly, and I read all the royal grants. And since, this time, I will say that they actually had Marine Patrol chase me down and arrest me. And now I'm being prosecuted. But it is the town, the Marine Patrol of this town, that has arrested me. And you have an interest in this matter because you are supposed to be protecting the public access rights of the public, and my rights are being violated. And Marine Patrol procedures do not match up with, what New York State says those procedures should be. This is the Office of General Counsel guidance on how enforcement should take place, for public access issues, right? And they say in this that those signs on the foreshore are a public nuisance that should be removed. They say that, the public foreshore is the public foreshore. They also say that if there's a dispute, a trespass dispute on the public foreshore, this is a little bit different from every other trespass dispute, and the enforcement officer should ask the property owner for clear evidence of ownership, right? and should not enforce unless they get that clear evidence. Marine Patrol did not have clear evidence. You know, well, there was quite a bit of time between the arrest and the incident. You know, on June 30th, the arrest was almost a month later, July 25th. All Marine Patrol has was a tax map that says that the Gardiners own that. But when you go to the file, and we had our title company pull the file, there is no mention of Cartwright Island in that file. It's a deed for Gardiner's Island in the Cartwright file, okay? And if you go to other sources, you can't find anything in there's no, all the royal patents are on Cartwright Island, publicaccess.com. Look at them yourself. There is no ox, okay? This is a fairy tale. They're deceiving people and intimidating people. So, and in fact, I want you to really understand how truly ridiculous the situation out there is. You know, these are the signs. Do you mind if I go on a little bit? I think this is an important issue.
Try to wrap up your comments.
Well,
we certainly will receive any written comments you want to give us, and you've given us a website.
But I do want to show you these. These are the signs that they have. They're actually standing in the water, okay? These are private land signs claiming New York State bottomland is their private land. This is a navigational hazard. Look, there's another sign. 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 Okay? This is, you know, Cartwright Island is largely, the length of Cartwright Island is below the high tide line. Okay? That is so low. The rack line exists only in two places on the island, the extreme north end and the extreme south end. That's where the birds nest. The entire long length in between them is below the rack line. You can see there's a rack line at the north end. This is the north end here. You know, that's where the birds nest. I don't go there because birds nest there, of course. But they don't nest on the foreshore, and they don't nest on this long length here that stretches almost a mile length between the north and the south. Indeed, you know, that you can see this is where birds nest here and here, but not the long length in between. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Richardson.
Well, let me just wrap up and say what I would like you to do. I would like you to immediately investigate ownership claims into Cartwright Island, because I do not believe that there is any basis for that. And I don't think that the town has any basis in their own records, because the police chief was not able to produce any. We've asked the Golets to produce ownership, and they refused to do so. I asked them, I said, please, you know, I won't even come on the island if you can show me, demonstrate to me that, you know, what the basis of your claim is that gives you clear ownership. They refused to do so. They're keeping this secret from the public. I'd ask you to find out what that basis is and put it on the table for the public. In the meantime, I ask you to do three things. Immediately remove those signs. And it is your responsibility to remove those signs, because there exists an agreement between McGinty and the Golets which establishes that the town has the responsibility for signage on those islands.
Well, it would be between the town board and the owners.
That, well, the agreement is actually signed by Bill McGinty.
But it would have been a town agreement.
Yes.
Voted on by the entirety of the town board.
There's his signature right there. That's Bill McGinty's signature
Right.
on the town
He
board.
would, I believe,
This-
would have been the
McGinty-
supervisor authorized to sign on behalf of the town board approval.
Yes, well, whatever deal was worked out with the town board, it seems to be a agreement that's designed to remove the public's right to public access. And there were, you know, there's many kinds of improprieties in that agreement, it appears to me. But the, you know, what I'd like to ask you to do is you have responsibility for that signage. That signage is clearly a navigational hazard. It's defined by OGC guidance as a public nuisance because it prevents things like fishing from the foreshore.
You said you had 3 requests.
Right. Number one, please remove the signage immediately. Number two, please instruct Marine Patrol to suspend enforcement because the enforcement is not in line with OGC guidance, which respects the public right to public access, until such time as you have clear proof of ownership, which they do not have now. 3, please investigate this, investigate the Galay-McGinty agreement, and look at what you can do to undo the damage to the public right to the foreshore done by this agreement. And I believe you can, because the agreement, while it seeks to prevent the town from, quote, providing public access, and it seeks to prevent the town from granting public access to the public, it's a sloppily written agreement. And it would not prevent you from recognizing a pre-existing right to public access under the law, which you should do. It does say you have to follow the law, so you should do that in following the law. And number three, you know, it also says that because you can't provide public access, so you can't run a free ferry service from 3 Mile Harbor to Cartwright, but it doesn't prevent you from allowing public access by doing nothing. It doesn't prevent you from taking down the signs because it tells you you have to follow the law.
Thanks.
So please, you know, I'd like to ask,
Will
you
we'll
open
take
up an
those
investigation
questions.
into
We'll
this
take
matter?
Your requests under advisement.
Is there a trustee who would like to champion public access on Cartwright right now and let the public know that they will be a champion for this issue and make sure that this happens? Is there anyone who will raise their hand and say, I'm going to stand up for public access if that's the right thing?
We'll take
We
your
always do
requests
this.
under advisement.
We need to take a look at that, what you have.
Okay, I'll send you all the materials that I have. It's all open for the public to look at.
Thank you
Thank you.
very much. We have, next up, Elizabeth Holliday.
He's got the list, so he'll need, if they're not here, they just don't go.
Marine Patrol
Okay.
Staff Enforcement.
Hello,
Removal.
my name is Elizabeth Halliday of
Hi, Elizabeth.
Amagansett. I am here to applaud the town for granting the easement for offshore wind farm, yet voice my opposition to the easement designating Cartwright Island foreshore as off-limits to the public. The actual ownership of Cartwright Island and the shoal is uncertain, since it does not appear to be included in any Crown grants and therefore would be public land. I request that the ownership question be resolved. In the meantime, I think that the prohibition of public access to Cartwright Island foreshore will prove ultimately as successful as the prohibition to alcohol. People still drink and people still visit Cartwright Island, and they keep getting chased off by security guards. This is a chronic yet negative dynamic, which I believe will continue. I urge the town to find on the ownership question. The public appears to be interested in the public access to the beaches. I invite you to read the press of this week and last week, and many letters to the editor in the local paper which voice a similar supportive view for public access to the foreshore, including, if you would permit me, please, this letter I received from Michael Zaleski, a resident of Amagansett. To whomever it may concern, as a homeowner in Amagansett and a frequent user of the water and beaches in Gardiner's Bay, I'm very much in favor of public access up to the high water mark of Cartwright Island. It's a travesty that the owners of Gardiner's have expropriated the public access to the related beaches. I urge the town of East Hampton carefully to review the deeds and agreements related to the Gardiners to determine the rights of its citizens and stop Marine Patrol from harassing beach users and remove the illegal signage. And that was sent to me by Michelle and Caroline Zaleski of Amagansett, which I'll give to the clerk when I'm finished. Thank you very much.
Sean Tyroller? Hope I said that right.
My name is Sean Tyroller from East Hampton. I am here on the issue that Rod brought forward. I have no firsthand experience with that. I wasn't with them, and I myself have never visited Cartwright Island. But I have taken my sunfish out in some of the other areas there. And I did visit Robbins Island once, which is a private island. This was the previous ownership. It was my understanding that they did own to the low water mark. I had a passenger that was probably a bad idea, and she needed to stay on the island when I got over there for me to come back with a boat for her. She wasn't going to make the trip on the sunfish back. There were no signs in the water. I understood that there was a possibility I was trespassing, and I was greeted by some gentleman in a Jeep. And they had no problem letting my passenger stay there under that circumstance, whether or not they were claiming ownership or the right of. I just think it's interesting that, clearly that's their island. It's not an ancillary disputed area. And their humanity, maybe a little bit more than what's being shown here. The other situation is, although I know Rod, I probably haven't seen him in a few years. I did follow this case a little bit in the Star this week, and I don't even know what he's charged with, if he's actually charged with a crime. But you are charged with a crime. I could certainly imagine if this is the method of enforcement, he's likely not to be the first person charged with a crime. I feel like I'm probably his peer. And if I were to have to stand in judgment, I feel like a substantial amount of doubt has been raised in a very serious way that I don't see how it would be anything but a waste of taxpayer funds to prosecute anybody without investigating this in a really sincere way to come to a conclusion. Whose property is it? How will it be enforced? Let the people know, and then we're not chasing our tails. That's it.
Thank you. John Sploretti? I'm sorry? Okay. Alex Grant? Hello, Alex. Welcome.
My name is Alex Grant of Springs. I've been in the area since I was born, basically, and used to sail around Gardiner's Bay since I was a little kid, and I was going to Gardiner's Island and, wondering, what was this place? It was really always a mystery who these gardeners were. And now it's interesting that it's all coming out that it's a royal grant from the 17th century, and I'm just wondering why something that existed before the country is now we're having this dispute in 2018 over a little piece of island, and it just doesn't seem that it should be a private space, this little island. So I'm here to support Rod in that because I think it should be public access.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to address the board? David?
Good evening, David Buddha from the Springs. I, of course, have been following this Cartwright Island controversy in the papers. It piqued my interest, especially when I found out that it's in the Springs. But what I did find out when I looked at the tax map is that there are two distinct and separate tax parcels. There's Gardiner's Island. It's on sheet 203. They pay a fair amount of taxes, although based on a conservation easement that was agreed to for 20 years back in 2005. A separate and distinct tax lot on sheet 204 is Cartwright Island. It's not on our tax rolls. There isn't even a property card. It's a distinct and separate property. In fact, when I went back, starting to, because of Mr. Richardson's activities and what happened to him, unfortunately, everyone's interested in, those people who are interested in beach access rights and people who hope one day to be able to stand up on a paddleboard and reach Cartwright Island, since the stand-up paddleboard race from the charity paddle from Montauk to Block Island is definitely out for me. Cartwright Island is within sight.
Many of us count ourselves in that category.
Cartwright Island is an aspiration.
Not him, though.
He's trying to talk me into
He can
it.
handle it.
Now, Cartwright Island, I haven't been there yet. People describe it as being ephemeral. It comes and it goes. I've read the articles, people who've been there, Mr. Bottini, who took me once on a tour of Accabonac Harbor. He's described his experiences there some years ago. What I found astonishing is that there's a management agreement that was agreed to in 2005 for the benefit of preserving and protecting birds, which is fine. The town should do that, the state should do that, the DEC should do that. They should do it in the way they do it on the mainland, with enclosures, exclosures, with signs where there are birds nesting. But the town seems to have been sucked into this agreement by the Golays to take upon a responsibility to preserve, to create a bird sanctuary, even though the Golays don't have any title to Cartwright Island. There is nothing in the management agreement that even recites ownership of Cartwright Island. They refer to the ownership of the mainland. The town, perhaps because the Golets family wanted to exclude the public because of their annoyance factor from Cartwright Island, and the town wanted to get a conservation easement over Gardiner's Island, they were willing to enter into this agreement, which frankly has no weight. It can't have any weight because you can only give what you have. And if the Golets and the trust that owns the Gardiner's Island doesn't own Cartwright Island, they can't give any restrictions or enter into an agreement with the town for managing it as a bird sanctuary only. It looks to me, and I'm not going to go through all I have read the ancient patents that created Gardiner's Island for the benefit of the Gardiners, but there's no mention of Cartwright Island. There's no suggestion that it extends that far. There's nothing in our current tax records to suggest that they have an ownership interest. There's nothing in the documents that were part of the 2005 transactions between the town and the Gardiner Island Trust that suggests that they own it, other than a pictorial map that could have been taken off of Google Earth. That doesn't establish ownership. It might establish a wish and a hope and a desire,
Thank you,
but
Dave.
certainly not ownership.
Let's see. Anyone else wish to speak? In the back, please. Just a moment. You'll have your opportunity. Please come to the podium. Hello.
My name is Amelia Sperry, and I'm a resident of East Hampton, and I support public access to Cartwright Island, mainly for safety reasons. I have a 17-year-old son, and, you know, it would be nice to know that he's not going to get arrested if he needs to take a break from his activities. So I hope this issue is resolved soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Averill? Good evening, Averill. How are you?
Averill Geis, town historian. And I'm going to start by reminding everybody,
Yeah, the mic.
pull the
yeah,
mic
there we
down.
go.
reminding everybody that Long Island was created by wind and water. And it's always been that way, and it always will be that way. And if Cartwright Shoals is underwater, that's the way it is. And if it's up above water, well, use it, enjoy it. But we also had other islands out there by Gardiner's Island where a lighthouse was, and that lighthouse tumbled down, and the lighthouse keeper almost lost his life out there.